Audi TT Mk1 V6, first MOT of ownership and MOT prep tips.
Hi all, Andy here and welcome back to the channel. I've nearly owned the V6 for a whole year, so it's time for its first MOT. So if you've been following the story of this car, and I will leave a... That's the same, mate. I picked this car up fairly cheap just under a year ago, and there's always been that niggling doubt that there could be something seriously wrong with it. Touch wood, if I can find some, it's been good so far. Mechanically, it's been sound, but I have been thinking there must be a reason why the previous owner wanted to get rid of it so quickly after purchasing. Apologies about the ducks. They find it hilarious. So today I'm covering some of the pre-MOT checks I'm going to undertake for the V6. I did make a similar video for the Roadster last year, so if you'd like to check out that video, please click on the link above. So my first starting point is to review last year's MOT and look at any advisories that are outstanding, and that's something I really would recommend. Save yourself the potential retest by addressing any advisories in the year you've got between MOTs. So I know last year this car was struggling with its brakes, so I have recently undertaken the replacement of the brake pads all the way around, and I did this for under £100. I used Brembo pads for this, and I have made a video on how to replace the front brake pads on your 3.2 V6. So if you'd like to check out that video, click on the link above.
Taking a closer look at my advisories, the first two on the list are to do with corrosion. When I first saw these after collecting the car, I took it to see a friend of mine who owns an MOT station with a ramp. A video of this visit can be found on my channel. He concluded at the time it was surface corrosion and to treat it with some hammerite. A year later, and I have not yet addressed this but hoping to do so shortly. There are a couple of quick wins on this list to do with the tyres. One of the first jobs I did to return this car to standard on purchase was to track down a set of original Rona wheels, get them refurbished and have a brand new set of Bridgestone Turanza tyres fitted. So those last two advisories on this list are definitely resolved. The remaining items are to do with the brakes. As mentioned, I replaced all brake pads front and back on the car, so I know that the wearing thin warnings are also taken care of. The pitted and scored discs is an interesting one. Discs tend to show signs of rust and oxidisation on the surface if your car is not getting a lot of use, because the pads simply are not pressing often enough against the discs to keep the surface clean through friction. So it could be your discs are fine and are showing signs of this. This car was doing a few hundred miles a year for the last few years, so you can see why this would be pointing out at MOT. With my 4,000 miles this year, the discs appear to be clean and plenty of thickness left in them. So I think this too has corrected itself. So of all the outstanding advisories, only the corrosion left to sort.
With the car in the garage, I've also listed the sections of the MOT that I'm going to be following on screen now. So first up, let's look at lighting.
A fairly important part of your car's safe operation is being able to see and being seen on the road. Therefore, one of the easy checks you can do at home is to verify all of your lights work. Turning your lights on, check that there are no bulbs out and all operate with a single switch on or off. So turn to your headlights to start. Check the side lights and the full lights as well as the operation of the full beam. You can do this by filming your car on your phone if you set it up, or you can ask a friend to observe. The lights operate in pairs, so make sure the beam colour and brightness match. Next, let's look at steering and suspension. A lot of this is visual checks rather than performance, but let's break it down into what can be checked. Firstly, get behind the wheel. Does the wheel feel tight and solid and without any play? Does the vehicle drive straight without any crazy wandering? And does the steering return to centre? All of the above should be true. Also consider if the steering feels heavy. Make sure the power steering fluid is topped up if not. Looking at the suspension next, it is a good idea to walk around the car and give it a good shove on all four corners. Make sure the car returns to level and listen out for any unusual creaking or clunking noises. If the car is not rising back up and levelling, the shocks could be leaking or there may be a broken spring. You can also remove your wheels and give the shock absorbers a visual inspection. Again, look for any leaks or fluids that may be coming from the struts. If you go as far as to remove the wheels, it is worth looking at the CV boots, both inner and outer, for leaks. The roadster failed on this a few years ago and they do tend to perish. It is also the very first job I covered on this channel. Brakes I have already discussed earlier in the video, and I have replaced the pads on the V6, but a lot of the performance of the brakes will come from your own driving experience. If they are squealing when stopping, that could be the audible sound of a wearing set of pads. You can of course make sure that the brake fluid level is topped up in the reservoir. If you have a micrometer or gauge, you can measure the thickness of your brake discs at home to check there is enough material left on them in relation to the minimum thickness stamped on the disc. If this is below minimum thickness, both sides of the car will need to be replaced, even if only one side of the car is low. Whilst you're up close and personal with the wheel, use your eyes and examine the tyre condition. Are there any obvious rips in the tyre wall where you've clipped a curb, or perhaps a bulge for the same reason? Check the tyre wear as well, as a bald tyre is another failure. These are simple things you can check with a tyre tread gauge that can be picked up fairly cheaply for a couple of pounds from eBay or Amazon. The minimum tread depth is 1.6mm, so if it's down to the wear bars, get them changed. You can do this at your leisure and shop around for the best deal rather than paying the garage price, which will undoubtedly be higher. Seat belts are something the MOT will want to make sure are safe, i.e. they have no damage, the belt webbing is all intact and no fraying, the belt locks work under sharp tension, they are fastened to the relevant parts of the car correctly, and general operation is good. If the belts look to not meet these requirements, it is probably a good idea to get these replaced. There are plenty of spares around online for these. Bodywork and fittings cover everything else you can find on the outside of the car and some of the inside. So let's start with your number plates. These need to have the correct font, lettering and spacing of the letters, and there are specifications you can find to meet these online. You need one on the front, normally in white, and one at the back, normally in yellow. If your plates are standard from original purchase, it is likely that they will be fine as long as there is no damage and they are clean. Exhaust and emissions are more visual tests, as you are unlikely to have an emissions tester at home, but look in the engine bay for any signs of leaking exhaust gases, and also take a look under the car at the exhaust to make sure it too is not leaking. It should only be sending fumes out of your tailpipe. However, a lot of the TTs are not getting as many miles as they once did, so make sure of a few things to maximise your engine efficiency. Make sure it is filled up with oil and fuel. Take it for a good long run to flush out the engine and clear it through. It's good to get the engine nice and hot before taking it down to the MOT station. I personally run a bottle of Red X fuel treatment through the tank to ensure all the injectors are clear in a tank full prior to MOT. That way you are making sure the system is as clean as possible. Lastly, the horn. Fairly straightforward to test. Give the steering wheel a firm press in the middle to activate the horn. It should give off a loud sound. If it does not, please check the fuses on the end of the dashboard in case it has blown. Anything further, it may need a replacement. There are two of them and easy enough to replace either side of the radiator. Well, the car is back from the MOT, and the good news is it passed on all of its advisories from the previous test. The bad news is that corrosion that we mentioned, well, that's got a hold a bit more than I thought it would. It's actually made a hole through the subframe. After speaking to the guy at the MOT station, Charlie, big shout out to Charlie at the MOT station, he advised me that the best course of action for the subframe is to find a second-hand one from a breaker. They don't make the part anymore, and I will cover that in a future video about the scarcity of some 3.2 parts. So I've reached out to a few of my breaker pals out there, and I have managed to secure one. It's not OEM. At this stage, I'm just happy to take one that's in good condition that will fit the car. Well, that will give me some time to source an OEM one if I want to fit it in the future. Until that part arrives and I get it powder coated, this car is going to have to remain in the garage because it's failed its MOT, so it's no longer roadworthy. However, I'm hoping to get this resolved within the next week or so. If you like what you've seen today, then please do give this video a thumbs up, and also think about subscribing to my channel, where you'll find a whole host of content on the Mk1 TT. Not only the 3.2, but also on the 225 Roadster that I own. As always, thanks for watching and see you soon. Take care.